Hello and welcome to Cumberland Viewpoint. I'm Dave Johnson. Cumberland Viewpoint is brought to you in part by the Putnam County Family YMCA, and it is a community service of Zimmer Broadcasting. Very glad you could join us today, and hope you've had a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday and weekend as we wrap it up here. And thought it was a great time for a visit from our friend Pat Ryan, who is the president of the Tennessee World Affairs Council, and who appears here on a regular basis to give us some global perspective on the news and things happening around the world. And of course, after the election, there are many new topics to discuss, particularly how the new administration will be facing many of the global challenges. And we have Russia, we have China, of course, Middle East and the turmoil there, North Korea, Afghanistan, and Pakistan are big ones on the plate for the new administration to deal with. But I want to welcome Pat Ryan to the show. How are you doing, Pat?
Great. How are you? Thanks for having me, Dave.
Lots going on with the Tennessee World Affairs Council, and we should run through that list. But before we do that, let's refresh people's memories about what the Tennessee World Affairs Council is and how it got started here in our area, and then how you moved to Nashville and are now the Tennessee chapter.
Fair enough. 2007, Dr. Chuck Womack and I and a couple of other folks here in Cookeville decided that we would like to help bring some global affairs awareness programs and opportunities to the community. I was familiar in my time in the Navy in Washington with World Affairs Councils, and there are 95 of them around the country, but there had never been one anywhere in Tennessee. So we decided to start a council here in Cookeville. We named it the Tennessee Council.
And it's a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization.
That's right. Yeah, all of the councils adhere to the same basic principles, that we're all 501c3 tax-exempt nonprofit organizations.
And you're a 26-year Navy veteran, retired, and this is something you do. It's really a labor of love, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I probably had an outsized interest in world affairs compared to some others in the community, but felt that it's good for especially young people to know what the opportunities are in international affairs careers, and also for the community as good citizens to understand what the issues are in global affairs. So Dr. Womack and I and a couple of others started the council here, and we operated from an office across from the Chamber of Commerce for several years, and eventually acquired more of a statewide mission with some of the educational programs that we were able to bring to the community, and eventually moved to Nashville, where we're based now at Belmont University. We're still an independent organization, like you said, nonpartisan. We don't have an agenda other than to help.
I believe you are partisan to knowledge.
Yes, I think if we have an agenda, it's to help people understand what's going on in the world.
And do you think, how far off are we as an American society as far as what you would call a good working knowledge of the kinds of issues and?
Well, sadly, there's not good news there. There was a survey done by the National Geographic Society and the Council on Foreign Relations, and their results were released this September, and it showed that of college-aged, actually I think the year group was, the cohort was 18 to 24 years old. 29% of that group could pass a standard test on general knowledge of international affairs, which is really abysmal, and points to the need for more community awareness programs and what's going on in the world. Because clearly, with the complicated world we have now, citizens need to understand what's going on. We just have seen the burial of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the Trade Pact, and I would venture to guess that if you asked 100 people any aspect of what the TPP was about, you would probably get one or two who could give you some insightful.
I did some pretty serious reading on that, and it's very complicated.
It is very complicated, and in fact, it's more than a trade pact. It's also a strategic arrangement dealing with our relationships in Southeast Asia and our relationship with China. China was not part of the TPP, so it could be said that despite misgivings over this or that provision of the actual TPP, the larger sense of what the arrangement was about was also geostrategic.
Do you think that people who were opposed to it and perhaps did not have a whole lot of working knowledge about it, but were opposed to it for various reasons, do you think that knowing more about it and having more facts and understanding it on a deeper level would change their minds?
Well, I'm not acting as a proponent or an opponent to it, but clearly I would like to see a more vigorous public conversation about such important issues. I think it got consumed by the election and campaign 2016, and it became a contest of who could condemn it quicker and more vociferously than to discuss what the implications were of it.
Well, you said a moment ago it got buried. You feel
well. All the reports this week, President-elect Trump said on day one of his administration, he's going to remove the United States from consideration of the TPP. It doesn't look like it'll get through the lame duck Congress under the Obama administration, and our partners in Southeast Asia and Japan, who are parties to the TPP, are already looking beyond the TPP. And unfortunately, there's a Chinese trade pact that will probably take its place. So,
a trade pact with the Chinese.
China and the partners that were lined up to participate in the TPP. So there'll be trade negotiations on the regional economic pact that will supplant and replace the TPP. And it looks like the United States will be outside that agreement. So it's a lose-lose for us in terms of the trade provisions and also the strategic relationship with our partners in Southeast Asia.
And the same goes possibly for NAFTA?
Well, NAFTA is a different
chopping block too,
a different situation since it's already an approved. It's in place. The TPP was a prospective.
Right, but Trump has said that he might.
Right. The president-elect has indicated that he wanted to reopen NAFTA and renegotiate a trade deal. The question is whether he will just abrogate the treaty in its entirety or seek to open up negotiations for a new pact with Canada and Mexico.
If you've just tuned in, we're talking with Pat Ryan, who is the president of the Tennessee World Affairs Council, a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that has a mission of raising awareness and knowledge about world affairs and is part of a national and even international network of world affairs councils, correct?
Well, we're all based in the U.S. There's been talk of the network expanding outside the borders, but the mission of the World Affairs Councils of America, which is the network of which we are a member, we're not a chapter or a franchise. We're our own independent organization, but there are 95 of them around the country, and they all have the same goal of helping Americans understand what's going on in the world. The provisions are that they're open to everybody, and it's sort of a grassroots effort.
And in order to do that, you have a number of different approaches, events, and other forms of raising awareness and knowledge. One of those is the WorldQuest State Championship that's happening on February the 12th. Tell us about that.
Right. That's a competition. It actually runs throughout the year. It's our effort in our educational outreach program. We have basically two main goal areas. One is community outreach, and we do things like town halls and so forth. But in educational outreach, we have a flagship program called WorldQuest, which is a competition between high school teams. 4 students get together, and as many teams per high school as teachers and students want to put together. And they compete in kind of a quiz bowl competition. Teams get together at Belmont on February 12th for the state championship match. We've done this for a number of years since we started in 2007. It's a great competition. It encourages students to understand more about what's going on in the world. It's complemented by a weekly quiz that we put out for students to maintain proficiency in global competency
And I'm on
what's.
your mailing list. And those questions can be hard.
Well, we don't want everybody to ace it. It's a good quiz. If anybody is interested, they can go to our
You
website
can learn a lot from taking
at
that quiz.
tnwac.org. And the good thing is, if people follow Twitter, they can get into our Twitter feed and see what the questions are going to be, answer
Do your
them
own
on
research, right?
in the Monday quiz, and we have a prize for the winners of the quiz. We pull a name out of the hat.
So you
But that's
give them
that's
a
just
little bit of advance on the questions, so they have a chance to
right.
really
Somebody who stays up to date on current events should have no problem with the quiz. But that's a compliment to the WorldQuest program. We encourage the students who are involved in WorldQuest to follow our Twitter feed so they're up to date on international affairs, and then they can do the quiz. We also have a global diploma certificate program where students who complete the WorldQuest program, um, along with a number of other things, if they take certain number of quizzes, or if they're in the Model UN, or if they do other activities in their school, at the end of the school year, we award a global scholars certificate to students who complete a certain number of points based on WorldQuest and some other activities they may become involved with.
And so the way this WorldQuest championship works is you have different groups from different high schools coming together to compete with each other on February the 12th. And
right.
If they win, they go to a regional or
no, the winner goes to the national competition at the end of April in Washington, and our World Affairs Council provides the transportation and lodging, and we go up there with them and arrange visits. The last team to go, the Martin Luther King Junior Magnet School, high school in Nashville, we took them up 2 days before the competition. We got to visit the Russian embassy, courtesy of the Russian ambassador, who was one of our speakers. We went to the Center for Strategic and International Studies, spent time on Capitol Hill with Senator Corker, who spoke to them. He's, as you know, he's the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, so is deeply involved in international affairs, spoke with the students for about 45 minutes. It was a great opportunity there. But we try to make it a great experience for the students who do go to Washington to see what the real world of international affairs is about.
So if there are teachers or other authorities in various schools around the state or who might be listening right now and they might be interested in putting together a team?
We encourage teachers to get involved in organizing teams. If there are students who are interested and don't have a teacher necessarily to help them organize a team, a parent can be a coach or a chaperone.
How many people on a team?
4 students per team, and they need not be, they could be homeschooled, they could be from 2 different high schools coming together.
So it's not about one team from one school. You put together.
Right. If depending on the circumstances, if there are 2 students from 2 different schools, they can join together and form a team. Our objective is not to make this so hard that students who want to do it can't do it. Right. We're trying to put material and resources in front of students, and we are very open as to how they
have mascots.
How they. I suppose if they came from different schools, they would have to come up with some team name. In fact, the last year's state championship match, we had schools from Huntsville, Alabama, and Atlanta, Georgia, students who did not have a World Affairs Council in their area that did WorldQuest. They had teachers who asked if they could participate in ours. We weren't quite sure what we would do if a team from Huntsville, Alabama won the Tennessee State Championship. I guess we'd have to relabel them Lower Tennessee or something. But
well, obviously, the emphasis is not on that kind of competition.
Right. We're more interested in giving the opportunity to as many students as can be accommodated, and not so much where the state lines are drawn.
And you're trying to encourage being smart.
Well, we would like we would like WorldQuest to evolve into a program that teachers use in the schools. In fact, we have some teachers who ask us each week to provide them the questions and answers for our weekly quiz that they can use in their classrooms.
If you've just tuned in, we're talking today with Pat Ryan. He's the president of the Tennessee World Affairs Council, based in Nashville. Their office is at Belmont University, and you have a regular agenda of speakers coming through for town hall meetings. I was at one not too long ago with former ambassador to the United Nations, Thomas Pickering, and very well done. You have people from the Tennessean to moderate and ask questions, and then you open it up to the audience. And these are really, really interesting and good events and opportunities for people to learn more and actually be in the same room with some of these folks who have had immeasurable influence on American politics and history, for that matter. Thomas Pickering has an incredible resume.
We've had a good run this year. We're very proud of the programs that we put together. Earlier in the year we had the ambassador from Russia who did a town hall and a number of events visiting in Nashville and even over in Memphis. We had the ambassador from Ireland who talked about the European Union, and at the time it was pre-Brexit vote, so we were talking about what the implications were in advance of that. In addition to ambassadors, we've also had the Consul General from Japan, Mr. Kinifuchi, who is resident in Nashville, the only Consul General in Nashville. He did a program with us on U.S.-Japan relations and East Asian security. We've had Middle East experts, and I think people like to come out. You know, you can dial up anything on the internet these days and get a good feel of international affairs, and we encourage people to do that. But I think people really like to come out and be eyeball to eyeball with people like the Russian ambassador and ask questions and get feedback directly to their questions. And then we had Ambassador Pickering to talk about the Iran nuclear deal. We had a film screening with a couple of ambassadors on the U.S. Foreign Service. And twice a year we do a program called International Careers and Jobs, in which we have ambassadors and others, returned Peace Corps volunteers, people in the commercial sector, to talk with primarily students about what working and living in international careers is like.
You actually have a fairly healthy pool of retired ambassadors in the Nashville area.
Well, there are two who are regular participants in our program, our various programs, Ambassador Charles Bowers and Ambassador Ronald Schlicker, who are both decades long in experience in very tough jobs. Ambassador Bowers was ambassador to Bolivia and was there during some tough times in the war on drugs. Bolivia was a principal producer of drugs, and the U.S. ambassador there was very involved in the campaign to put that down. Ambassador Schlicker has been the ambassador to Cyprus. He was the head of the State Department counterterrorism effort. He was the principal deputy for Near East affairs, the coordinator for Iraq after the Iraq war in 2003. Has been in Beirut, across the Middle East, so he's seen it all and done it all. So
and you have a couple of town halls coming up. One on January the 17th,
right,
on U.S.-Russia relations with the new administration, and that will be with Dr. Mark Katz, who is a professor of political science. And
right, we're
the Wilson Center
in addition to ambassador visits, we do host scholars and business people and military officers and others. And in this case, Dr. Katz will be coming down, provided by the Kennan Institute at the Wilson Center in Washington. And he's an expert on U.S.-Russia relations, and he'll be talking about the relationship with Moscow for the new administration.
Is that a Wednesday night? These are on Wednesday nights, January the 17th?
The 17th could be a Wednesday. I'd have to
look at the calendar. But and then on February the 28th, you have another one.
Right. That'll be a repeat performance of Ambassador Bowers and Ambassador Schlicker, who the night after the election, on November 9th, they came together for a town hall, and I participated in that as the moderator. And we talked about the critical issues facing the new administration. We sat down in advance and tried to look at what the critical issues were, and we got to about 13 or 14 critical items and stopped counting at that point.
Critical.
And pulled off the top 5 for our conversation, given the time constraints.
Tell me if these are the correct ones. You've got Russia, strategic competition, China, as well as Middle East, regional turmoil, North Korea, a troubled peninsula, and Afghanistan and Pakistan, America's longest war.
Right. Those were the
five that you pulled off.
those were the five that we decided we would tackle on November 9th. On February 28th, they'll be back for a town hall briefing to talk about the first month of the new administration and how things are going in the foreign policy arena.
And so we have a lot of things we could talk about here.
We do.
As far as,
but
the
let me
area.
just close that out with an invitation to anybody who's listening
Yes,
to get involved in the World Affairs Council. These events that we do are open to the public. They're free. Most of them are held at Belmont University. We welcome students, the general public, to come out and participate. And likewise with the WorldQuest competition, students, teachers, parents, if they want to make sure that their young people are getting more exposure to international affairs, they're welcome to contact us. They can call our number or email, and it's all on the website, tnwac.org. Just scroll over to contact and give us a shout.
tnwac.org.
Right.
And that stands for Tennessee World Affairs Council. And all the information is there. And we'll repeat that, and maybe we'll throw out a phone number here in a few minutes before the show ends at the end. But where do you want to jump off first here, Pat Ryan?
Well, there's a lot to cover. As I mentioned, we've
how about Russia?
We couldn't even encapsulate
competition.
the critical issues. Well, Russia is particularly interesting because we've been looking at the U.S.-Russian relationship for quite some time, and with the election of Mr. Trump, it's taken a different turn because during the campaign, he indicated taking the U.S. foreign policy in a new direction of trying to work with Mr. Putin, and he was criticized for some of the relationships between himself and the Russian government. So,
which relationships? What are we talking about there when we say relationships?
Well, there was controversy. One of his principal campaign advisors had been involved with issues dealing with the Ukraine, Mr. Manafort, and now apparently his son is involved in conversations with people concerning U.S.-Russia relations. So,
and the Ukraine being a country that Putin has indicated a desire to annex or take back.
Russia has already taken over Crimea, which was part of Ukraine, in violation of an agreement between the United States, Russia, and Ukraine. So there's that matter still on the table.
And they were sanctioned heavily for that.
Right. That's part of the issues with Russia is the heavy sanctions that exist, stemming back from their
economic sanctions mainly.
Economic sanctions, which started back when they invaded the country of Georgia some years back during the Bush administration. But clearly, after the invasion and annexation of Crimea,
right.
And the ongoing conflict in eastern Ukraine, the sanctions have been continued and built upon.
So you will be talking about that also on February the 28th.
Right.
And so then you also have on the plate China, geostrategic competition, and that has to be somewhat equal to, if not as concerning as the Russian.
Well, if you had to put a number on it, I would probably keep those in order of relationship with Russia, given some of the issues on the table. For example, Syria, the Russians in the last year have become extremely involved to the point where they're militarily involved in supporting the regime of President Assad in Syria, and the United States and Russia are operating military forces in close proximity, which we've learned through the Cold War is something that
can be dangerous.
It can be dangerous, and we want to make sure that we're all on the same sheet of music as far as what the ground rules are.
Now, I know that people in Europe, many are nervous about the election and the results of the election because of President-elect Trump's indication that he is possibly looking at doing away with NATO, or at least not taking it very seriously, and that is the prime alliance that protects European countries from an advancing.
Well, during the campaign, he made some questions that troubled some leaders in Europe, especially concerning the use of American forces to keep up with our agreements in the NATO treaty, the Atlantic Treaty, which calls for any nation to come to the defense of other nations who might be subject to an attack. And specifically regarding the Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania.
Formerly Soviet Union.
Formerly part of the Soviet Union, now independent and part of NATO. And part of Chapter 5 of the NATO treaty is that states will come to the aid of other states that are invaded or subject to aggression. And Mr. Trump indicated that he would have to look at that on a case-by-case basis based on whether or not they met their defense expenditures in keeping with the NATO agreement, which for each country is 2% of their GDP.
Rapidly running out of time here, but you will also be discussing the North Korea peninsula and the trouble on the peninsula there between South and North Korea, as well as there is friction between them and China and other issues over there.
Many observers would put the situation in the Korean peninsula among the top issues of the day, given the rapid developments in the last year or two in North Korea of long-range ballistic missiles and increased efficiency of their nuclear weapons program. The concern is that they may develop a nuclear weapon that they could mount on a ballistic missile, which could threaten the United States. They already have the ability to threaten their regional neighbors.
But don't they know that any kind of aggression like that might result in a complete annihilation of themselves by?
It's difficult to assess what the rationale in North Korea is to building such a program. The problem with North Korea is that some people call for preempting the capabilities. They already have nuclear weapons. They have ballistic missiles, but their conventional firepower. If you look at the geography of the Korean Peninsula, the city of Seoul, the capital of South Korea, is so close to the demilitarized zone. They're being held hostage by long-range artillery, which...
So if there was a preemptive strike, we know that UN would just automatically attack.
Yes, the devastation to the South Korean population, and he may have the ability to attack U.S. and other allies in the region, including Japan and U.S. bases in the region.
So among those issues, you also have Afghanistan and Pakistan to talk about, and then there's the regional turmoil in the Middle East, and those are the top 5.
Well, Dave, in fairness, a half hour is.
No. I was going to say those are the 5 that you separated out from the
right.
13 critical issues, and when you start looking at this, I'm reminded of Colin Powell, who said when somebody asked him how does he sleep at night when he was the Secretary of State, and he said, like a baby, I wake up every 2 hours crying.
Yeah. It's quite a laundry list for anybody to have in their inbox.
Well, we're out of time now, so we're going to have to just leave it there. But if you would like to look more into this, January 17th, town hall meeting on U.S.-Russia relations, and then February 28th, you have the scholars coming to talk about foreign policy landscape after the first month of the Trump administration. And again, it's tnwac.org.
That's right. They can get more details and RSVP on the website.
All right, Dr. Pat Ryan, it's always a pleasure to see you, and continued good luck and great work with the Tennessee World Affairs Council.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
It's tnwac.org.